just by virtue of where you're sitting, you are basically sending the subliminal message like we should be eating, right? So if you want to get people away from just thinking about when do we eat, hold your Seder in your living room instead of your dining room or your basement or outside on your porch in this COVID year. You know, take your wine, take your Seder plate outside with you. You can go back inside, of course, to your table when you actually get to the meal, but liberate yourself from your table. Your table is not your friend when it comes to having a Seder that will be moving to people and take them on the journey. So with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn things over to Becky and Jessica.
Hi. So this is exciting. I like the idea that, you know, when you said you can free yourself up and do everything in unusual ways and do crazy things. I'm already thinking of crazy things I can do to make my family think I'm even stranger than I already am. Which brings me to my main point of what our Seders have developed to be. Because when I was doing it when my kids were young, the main idea was to have it be something that they would remember. And so I always have had, instead of reading about the whole story of Passover, instead of reading that, I made it very interactive, and the kids were actually doing the story for us. So we always were play acting. We've done Star Wars themes, Game of Thrones themes. One of our first one was a CNN theme, and it was ENN for Egyptian News Network. We did a Hogwarts Harry Potter theme up at our cabin where we actually hung floating candles, and you had to do the sorting hat to see what table you sat at, and that was really cool because there's actually a Hogwarts Haggadah that you can use that's out there. A couple of other things we've done is the 15 steps to freedom. The rabbi talked about the 15 steps in for Pesach. We actually, in our old house, we had 15 stairs. And so each stair had the steps. So it was literally the 15 steps to freedom. I've also used the 15 steps as for a scavenger hunt throughout the night. So it culminates with the Afikomen and the ending. And so wherever we were at in the Seder on the 15 steps, there was a clue and you had to go search around and find it. And then one thing I really liked was, and the rabbi had kind of encouraged this, before we sat for the meal, we did the entire thing on the floor in our basement with pillows and scarves and things. I kind of made it look like we were in a tent out in the wilderness, and and just sitting there, and we had appetizers and things on the floor, and it just made it a lot more relaxing and fun. This year, we're gonna do something I got off the internet called Escape the Plagues, and it's a social justice Passover puzzle game. It's kind of like an escape room game, and I can't give any more away because Jessica's gonna be here with her family. So, but as interactive as you can make it, I find it more fun, and that's just kind of how I enjoy doing it. So that's what we've done over the years. Jessica, do you have something else?
Yeah.
Add to that?
I can tell some of you might be intimidated by some of the suggestions my mom has. She's very creative. But as a kid, thinking back, I do remember when, instead of reading the whole story and going through the Haggadah, like acting it out like a play, that definitely happened. When we were kids, we also created our own Haggadah, where the kids like colored it, and it was all made before, and we still actually have copies of that, and we from time to time still actually use it. One thing, and I think lots of families do this, but it's a great way if you have children to get them energized to participate, is have one of the children dress up as Elijah. So it's as if Elijah actually came. The kid actually kind of thinks that's really cool that they're at the door when they open it up and people are like, oh, he actually came. I'd say last year, this is just my suggestion with Zoom. I think it's much better if whoever the leader is just shares the Haggadah on the screen so that people aren't trying to figure out where they're supposed to be in the Haggadah. So I think if you're the leader of it and you're doing it via Zoom, if you show it on the screen, then you can call on people to read and people aren't trying to figure out where the heck you are. I think that's a good suggestion. I did like my mom said, sitting on the floor and doing the Seder and separating it from the dinner. I think that does help. Definitely have to have food, especially with children. You must have food. They will go crazy. The more you can feed them, the better it is. I could be wrong about this, but I think it was last year I ordered the PJ Library Haggadahs, and I believe inside the PJ Library Haggadahs, they actually have questions you can ask people. At least I believe that's the Haggadah that has it, but on the side they had, yes, that one. I think on the side of some of the pages, they have questions. And so, you know, even if it seems like a kid Haggadah, it's actually a great introductory Haggadah, and it has questions and discussion points you can have with people because, you know, maybe people aren't going to ask questions, but you could ask them questions and have them answer. So, and then I don't know much about the historical meaning behind this, but I do love this whole idea of you have an orange on the Seder plate and it's some sort of feminine thing. I don't remember the whole thing. Maybe Rabbi can share what it is, but I think that's kind of neat.
So thanks, Becky and Jessica. I typed in a few links into the chat, you know, for the Hogwarts Haggadah. And for making your own Haggadah, there's a haggadot.com where you can kind of cut and paste stuff. It's pretty cool. And also a note to creating lively Passover Seders. There's lots of versions of the orange on the plate, which is a feminist. So the apocryphal story is that somebody asked, it's Susanna Heschel, but various people about, you know, women being rabbis. And the answer was, you know, a woman as a rabbi is like makes as much sense as an orange on a Seder plate, right? So that's kind of the history a little bit, or, you know, maybe the mythology anyway. Beth, if you can bring us to page 9 in the Haggadah. So this is a short and easy song. A lot of the Pesach songs are short and easy songs. And I guess I should add, if anybody wants copies of any of these songs with chords, I will be glad to send it to you. Just email me, and I'll send you a file with all the songs that I'm doing this evening. Okay, so Avadim Hayinu means we were slaves. Ata b'nei chorin. Now we are free. Those are all the words, and it goes something like this: Avadim hayinu, ata b'nei chorin. 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 We were slaves, now we are free, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nei chorin. We were slaves in Egypt, but now we are free. And with that, I'll turn things over. Beth, do you want to introduce our next speaker?
Yes, coming to us live from Massachusetts is one of our dearly missed but very successful college students at the moment, Alex Swerdloff. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Alex. Like Beth said, I am a Cabby community member, but I'm not in Boise right now. I'm at college in Wellesley in Massachusetts. So my Passover is probably going to look very different this year, being at college during COVID times, figuring it out. But I think one thing I've always loved about the Passover story is the connection to social justice. That's something that's drawn me to Cabby too, is the focus on social justice and on helping others. When I was involved with Cabby Teens during high school, I was our social action vice president. So I think incorporating Jewish values and social change has always been something that's really important to me. And I think the Passover story really highlights that. I think, like was mentioned before, adding items to the Seder plate that emphasize inclusivity is one way to do that. I've also heard the orange for women, and I think that can also symbolize LGBT Jews as well. I've heard like olive branch for peace. I actually have a link that has some of the other things you can add that I'm going to send in the chat. Yeah, so that's one way I think to create sort of an environment of like inclusivity and talk about social justice during the Seder. Also making connections to modern day social change issues that you care about. I know right now I'm really thinking about the Asian American community after what happened in Atlanta. Yeah, I think like Dan said, sometimes the Seder is phrased as remembering, but I think it can also be a really important way to call us to action in the present. Also doing like food drives with Hametz, and yeah, that was one of my favorite things that we did during teen group in high school, was leading the young people at the synagogue in food drives and in social change efforts. So yeah, I just rambled for a little bit, but that's definitely the social justice aspect of the Passover Seder is one of my favorite parts. And always, I think the Seder always makes me reflect and think about what I can do for change today.
Thank you,
Alex,
Alex.
thank you. And so many of the things that you brought to us as a teen are still with us. So you're a strong, enduring legacy. So I'm going to do Beth. I guess we want to go to page 15 in the Haggadah. Probably if there's one Pesach song that most people know, it's this one, because the chorus is just one word, which is Dayenu. Dayenu means it would have been enough. So the song is really about gratitude. We go through a series of things. God, if you just brought us out of Egypt and not split the sea, Dayenu, it would have been enough. And had you split the sea but not fed us through the desert, Dayenu. And we go through this whole list of things, and it is really a way of bringing us to gratitude. I'll share, you can pretend you're doing this as I sing, and if you're muted, you can sing loudly along with me, all of us. In the Haggadah put out by the Hartman Institute by Noah Dishon, he mentions a custom of Afghani Jews. And the custom is to take scallions. You have scallions on your Seder plate. You put them on your plate. And when you get to Dayenu, everybody gets a scallion, and you kind of whip one another with the scallions. They call it the Afghani onion free-for-all. It's it's fun. So Dayenu. Ilu hotzi hotzi anu mi Mitzrayim, hotzi anu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu natan natan lanu et haTorah, natan lanu et haTorah, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. And so on and so on and so on, and have a lot of fun with that. And I'll turn things back to you, Beth.
So next, from the Missouri wilderness are Amy and Charles. Did I get that right? You guys are all over the country, but I think I remembered you guys are in Missouri right now, right?
We are.
Good. So
It's not exactly wilderness. We're just outside St. Louis.
okay. So Amy and Charles are longtime members of CABI who have wandered for the last few years. We miss you, but this is one of the benefits, right? That you can be back with us. So welcome.
Thanks. Well, I made a few notes of things we've done over the years. I'm not sure it's fair to call them traditions because it really seemed to change every year. And it kind of followed the age of our kids. So like in the early years, in the early 90s, we were primarily guests, but occasionally we'd take a turn to host something in like the apartment clubhouse. We'd create a unique Haggadah. One of the fun things that I would do is, and it may not sound impressive nowadays, but back in 1985 or 1990, it was somewhat unique to be able to use Photoshop or a similar program. And I'd grab screen captures from the movie The Ten Commandments, and I'd superimpose the faces of our guests into the Haggadah in the Passover story, because we're supposed to treat the story as if we were actually there. And so in our Haggadah, we were. Then we entered baby making years, and we had toddlers and youngsters, and that's when they really got to be fun. We would have more of a carnival type atmosphere. We also owned our first house, and so we had no problem just doing whatever we wanted around it and causing damage, whatever. So we would set up usually 15 or 16 or 18 stations in different rooms around the house and do activities like hunting for the chametz. Although we didn't have real chametz for that activity, it would be little pieces of paper with pictures of things that were chametz. So it might be a cupcake or a cookie or a piece of pie, and the kids would search for that. Another thing for the toddlers, we got one of those big plastic pools. Well, big. It was for the living room big, but not for the backyard. And we filled it with water and floated baskets, since there were lots of baskets available for sale in April for another holiday. And we'd get the baskets and fill it with a plastic baby doll, and the kids would pull out a little baby Moses out of the Nile. One of my more favorite ones was we set up a balance beam. It was really a 2x4 in the living room, and it led up to the television set and through the VCR, which tells you how long ago it was. We had, again, loops of the Ten Commandments where the Hebrews were crossing the Dead Sea. And so all the kids would cross over. How many people did we have at our Seders? Do you remember?
35 or 40. Because we did all the big families.
So, you know, we would have lots of kids in it. We tended to group with other big families because nobody else would have us over. It's tough to invite a family of 6 or 7. We just overwhelmed them. And so we would have other families that also had 4, 5, 6 kids. So it was just a big free-for-all, it seemed, in the house. Anyways, so with the balance beam, they'd walk across the balance beam towards the TV while they would show Moses raising his hands and the other characters in the show going, oh, look at that, and then the water parting. And then a friend would grab a rope on one side of the kids and I'd get a rope on the other, and we'd pull, and it was hooked up through some pulleys, and it would raise up some curtains that had fish and seashells and things on either side. It probably sounds corny to people on this show, and certainly to teenagers it would be. But if you're 3, 4 years old, it was really exciting to do. Let's see, what else did we do? We had stations for all kinds of stuff. So it might be lighting candles or karpas or matzah or grape juice, but all the stations were represented. So everybody was moving. And my goal was for them to be exhausted and fall asleep by the time they got to the dinner table. Then we got to the more the teenage years. Oh, also the Haggadah at that time was generally a workbook. And so when they did each activity, they would get a sticker to put in their workbook, or they'd color something like that. Did you want to talk about teenagers?
No, it's not. You should move on, 'cause-
Okay, so when the kids got older, they were teenage years. It was more of a current events themed Seder, and the Haggadah was unique every year, centering around that theme. And so we would invite in guests, although now it was more older people coming, older, so 15 years old, or maybe their parents or our friends that were perhaps in their 30s or 40s. And the guests would each bring something for some part of the Seder. Being encouraged to hurry up because I'm only supposed to talk for 5 minutes. But so, for example, one year I was supposed to bring something the whole theme was the social justice theme again, and I was doing the afikomen, and so I brought a T-shirt that just had a hand like this, and the slogan was "Free Afikomen." Anyway, everybody would participate with something like that. We generally would have like 2 or 3 people doing each section, and they'd sing a song or write a poem or bring something and tell a story about it. And now that we're in our retirement or our pre-retirement, we're sort of a familia diaspora because, we've got David in Pittsburgh and Rachel in Phoenix and Noah in Seattle and Sarah in Colorado Springs, and Amy and I are all over the place. I mean, every month. So we do stuff on Zoom. Our theme this year will probably be something like wandering in the desert for 40 years, since that's pretty much what we're doing. And the only thing that I would call traditional that I would say would be consistent from year to year is the last minute nature of coming up with something. So if anybody has any good ideas, throw it in the chat comments for here's something for wandering the desert, because we haven't finalized anything, or we've just really barely started.
Thanks,
So that's
Charles.
it.
Thanks, Charles and Amy. So this is a song to welcome a guest who we invite to all of our Seders, Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet, because our Seder, in marking our liberation, we see it as a taste of a time when the whole world will experience liberation and justice and peace, and Elijah is the one who ushers in that time. Beth, it's on page 22. There you go, bottom of the page. Hey, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimiravi Amenu, Yavo Elenu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanadi, Eliyahu Atishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi.
I want to point out that we're recording this and it's also going to be on, will it be available on YouTube, Tim? So if you're like me and you have no memory for music except having to repeat it over and over and over again, you can go back to YouTube, Hi Piper, and listen to it.
If you want to hear me sing way out of my range repeatedly again and again, you can play that back a bunch of times.
No, we love it.
So our next guest, maybe I'll say a word, is appearing by video. Rabbi Devin Villarreal is a modern Orthodox rabbi, a good friend and colleague to me. He's in Pocatello and with his family. And this is their Sephardi rendition of the 4 questions. So turn it over to the Villarreal family.
Shalom uvracha to everybody. This is Devin Maimon Villarreal, together with Oliver and Eleanor. We're happy to be here with you to share the melody that our family uses for Manishtana. It is a melody found throughout the Sephardic world, in Spanish and Portuguese communities, in Ladino-speaking communities. It's very common in them both, and is really reflective of the joyous character that is found throughout Sephardic religiosity and spirituality. And again, we're excited to share it with you. And here's Oliver and Eleanor to help us out.
1, 2, 3.
Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot shebecho halelot ein anu matpilim afilu pam achad vehalayla hazeh שתף עמים שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים חמץ או מצה והלילה הזה כולו מצה שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים שאר ירקות והלילה הזה מרור שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים ושותים בין יושבים ובין מסובים והלילה הזה כולנו מסובים.
Some nice laughter in there too.
It just took like 6 takes
to reflect the joy.
I'm so sorry.
Chag Sameach, everybody. Shalom uvracha.
I wish they could have been here, but oh my gosh, it's great, right?
Yes. And, so even if you're Ashkenazi, it's fun to try different things and lots of Jewish cookbooks. There are very different culinary traditions in the Sephardi and Mizrahi world. I always try to make at least a Sephardi version of charoset. A quick joke, the Sephardi Jew in Israel invites his Ashkenazi friend to come over for Shabbat lunch, and the Ashkenazi Jew goes over, and all this amazing, spicy, delicious, Middle Eastern Jewish food, and he's astounded and loves it. So he says, next week you have to come to my house. And so the next Shabbat, the Middle Eastern Jew, goes to the home of the Ashkenazi Jew, and, he serves him kugel and cholent and, all the traditional Ashkenazi food. And that very evening, the Sephardi Jew immediately leaves home and immediately checks into the COVID quarantine hotel and says, help me, I can't taste anything. So toward the end of the Seder, there are songs that are fun. They're kind of games. Two songs most famously, and the first is "Who Knows One." It's in Aramaic, and I'll sing a little bit of it for you. But you can also, you could also sing it in English. And one of the custom always in my home growing up was to try to get through all of it in one breath, which is easy enough with one. It's a little harder when you get to 13. The kind of standard Israeli melody goes like this: Echad mi yodea, Echad ani yodea, Echad Eloheinu, 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 Sheba shamayim u'ba'aretz, Shnayim mi yodea, Shnayim ani yodea, Shnei luchot habrit, Echad Eloheinu, 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 Sheba shamayim u'ba'aretz. But you could do it in English too. Who knows one? I know one. One God of heaven and earth. One God, one God, one God, one God. One God in heaven and on earth. Who knows two? I know two. Two tablets of the law, one God in heaven and earth, one God, one God, one God, one God, one God in heaven and on the earth. And you can just take it all the way through. If you're, another way to do it is to just read them really fast and see if you can get through in one breath. So we have Elizabeth and Varia next. Is that right, Beth?
We've got, I think,
Yeah,
Brad.
It's us. We're next.
Yeah.
So we've been holding Seder with our group of families for a number of years, and we've got some decent traditions that stick around no matter who's holding it, but there's a lot of variation as well. So our favorite Haggadah is the Different Night Haggadah, which they do have an online version. I don't know how you get a hold of it, but they emailed it to us last year, like, here, have this for this year. It's terrible. Anyway, we really like this one. I kind of like the idea that maybe someday when I, at 120, die, my children will be like fighting over who gets the earmarked Haggadah of Doom, because this one's mine. The red one says, do these. So I never get nervous, Beth, about doing a Seder, because if I just make sure and hit the red tabs in order, then I know I'll have done it. But the key is to shake it up, because of course we have a lot of different ages of children. And also that's just a lot of talking for one person to do, and it's just boring for everybody. So some of the different traditions that we've got, the key one is for whoever's leading to lead, but to try to poke other people to be like, hey, do you want to take the 4 questions this year? And then that person can focus on doing something interesting with it, because that shares the load. I love the idea Charles and Amy were saying of like making my own Haggadah. And I feel like I totally have that in me, except I've got a full-time job and multiple kids, and you guys had that too, I'm sure, but it's never something I've managed to do, but at least this way it can be shaken up and made new each year. So having different people take different sections and find it and make it interesting. We've actually been using multimedia for years, not Zoom. I don't want to use Zoom anymore. Not Zoom. But just like, hey, I can show pictures up here. So like having for the 4 kids, having being able to show pictures to talk about it and whatnot. And if we're on Zoom, use the medium. You can share more than just your Haggadah page when you're doing that. Like, make it fun as Zoom can be. One of the traditions that we have that is stayed, no matter who's holding it, is 2 things. This is based on PJ Library books that have gone out, but basically One, Varia, and Elizabeth may say this, I'm sorry, always, we're like, we can't even start. And we have to make sure Varia is here by the time we do the plagues, because she does this whole, she reads the book with the let my people go, and Pharaoh shouted, no, no, no. And so we're all screaming, no, 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 like even the little kids, it's super fun. And then Arlen, last year, I think it was, got a Dayenu book. And so he and Freya help read that one. So having like some books involved so that the kids are there, and just whatever people bring to it is good. You've got to shake it up. We have props. We try to have activities for the kids, and that's always like the hardest one. And we try to have discussions for the adults. It's trying to find a balance is really interesting. One last thing before I turn it over to Brad, who likes to talk about food, because, and that's, we have a division of labor. I'm in charge of the Seder, of the ceremony part of it, and Brad's in charge of the food, which leaves always, right as we're supposed to start, going, wait a minute, nobody put together the Seder plate, because to me that looks like food, and to him that looks like a ceremony. Every single year that happens. For those who are having to Zoom this year, which does include us, the best thing I can say is try really hard to, like, beforehand, before you're trying to get going, to like vet out, especially your sound, because if the sound is crackly, if you can't hear each other, like if you thought it was boring just on Zoom or just reading through the thing in the first place, like now try not being able to understand somebody. Pretty much anytime I do anything, I actually set up beforehand, I set up the various cameras and I like block it out and make sure people can see things. You will see this on May 1st at my daughter's bar mitzvah. I'll be there early setting up cameras. Anyway, but especially sound. If you can't hear people, that's just the worst.
And we have the pucks now, right? But you recommend?
Yeah, it's a speakerphone. This is like $30-$40, so I realize not everybody may have, but it's good, it's loud, and it picks up sound from all over the place. And so if you're leading, if you're the one main talking, make sure you've got a good mic. I think it's a great investment because this is the hell year we're in. But anyway, especially like get on with a friend beforehand and be like, hey, can you hear me? Can I hear you? Like, can I hear you over here? Because if there are people sitting over there, like your phone may not do it. Anyway.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, go for it.
Talked about food. So we all want to cook and we all want to be together. So what we did last year, because last year was also a Zoom Passover, is we set up some tables in our garage. We had a group of families that we were going to Zoom with. And like 4 o'clock in the afternoon before the Seder, there was a table per family, and you brought over containers of the food that you made that you're going to share. And you put so here's the one that's going on their table, and here's the one for their table, and here's the one for their table. And then everybody can come to, once everybody got all their foods on their tables, then they could take it home, and we still got to share food. So it's a way to kind of potluck your Seder. You don't have to cook it all with your friends without being with your friends. And so I highly recommend, that way you can work it out with people, because, not everybody has a tagine to do a wonderful vegetable medley. But by golly, if somebody wants to share their vegetable tagine, I know everybody else will be in. And then I just want to touch on one other ceremonial thing, which is actually really cool that I got to experience when I was younger, is the cup of Elijah. So one year we were at a Seder, and the host had a trick wine cup that all the wine drained into the stem when he kicked it off. So we're all his kids are watching, and then the wine goes away from Elijah's cup. It was really cool. And I figured out how the trick works, but it's still something, one of these days I'll do. And it's just fun, right? It's for kids to go, but Elijah was here, maybe. And, it makes it a good time for them to kind of enjoy it. But yeah, so the other thing I'll talk about food briefly is Middle Eastern food. If you haven't cooked, it is very not grain intensive. It's very much vegetables and that kind of thing. And so if you're looking for your alternatives for Passover, it's a great thing to try out, just to do something different. Everything from grilled eggplants to carrots and sweet potatoes. We've got just a ton of great recipes out there.
Terrific. I was exploring the new, that's not new, but Michael Solomonov's book. It has some good kosher or Passover dishes too, and that are accessible for those of us who are not quite the chef that you are, Brad. Thank you, guys. I feel like I failed my family. So now that I have teenagers and college students, and I think all the things, we still have more, but I'm learning so much that I wish that I had done so that my children will remember forever how wonderful. So now I've got a hope for grandchildren. Not too soon, but soon.
It's not too late to scar them for life. You can keep bringing them back.
So just a note, really, and they say that in this book, you don't have to do everything in a year, right? There are lots and lots of things, and it's good to have some things in your bag of tricks that you can hold in for next year, right? So collect ideas, and you don't have to use them all at the same time. Beth, if we can jump up ahead in the Haggadah, page 26 and page 27. This is another one of those kind of fun songs that it's fun to sing fast. Again, it's very, very simple. The words, like Who Knows One, are in Aramaic as opposed to Hebrew. Chad Gad Yah is Aramaic for one goat, Echad Gadi in Hebrew. So the chorus is Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. And the verse is all, again, kind of build on one word. Dizvan Abba Bitre Zuze, Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. Va'ata shun va'achva legad Yah, Dizvan Abba Bitre Zuze, Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. Va'ata kalba v'nashak l'shun rada achla legad Yah. Dizavin Abba Bitre Zuze, Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. Then came the stick and beat the dog that bit the cat that ate the kid my father bought for 2 zuzim. Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. And you get all the way to the angel of death, and then God slays the angel of death. And it all ends happily ever after. There are millions of interpretations of this song. Lots of the rabbis see it as a kind of commentary on, one nation conquers the Jewish people, and then another, Rome conquers us, and then somebody else conquers Rome, and it's and in the end, God looks out for us, as it were. It's beautiful. There's also I have a favorite poem that I always read with this, by Natan Alterman. It's about Chad Gad Yah, and how in this book full of marvels and miracles and epic scenes, there's this room at the end of the Haggadah for the father and the boy and the goat, and it's a kind of human level piece. So with that, Beth, back to you to introduce who our next.
And next, coming to us from far away Nampa, we have Elizabeth and Varia. Are you together, or is it just you? Hi.
It's just me, because of course Varia is still at work, as always. So
Nampa, by the way, is nearby, guys.
I am super. Yeah. I am super impressed by all these really, really creative, amazing things that people do. And I guess what I want to say is, don't let that scare you off. I was raised in a mixed Jewish, non-Jewish family, and my non-Jewish father led a Seder every year. And when I went off to college, I started leading Seders. Why? Because I owned the Haggadah. Like the Haggadah. I had one, my mother sent it to me, and in Missoula, Montana, everyone knew I was Jewish. So all of a sudden, Passover comes, people come crawling out of the woodwork. We hear you have a Haggadah. The first Seder I led, we were sitting on the floor, scrounging whatever food we could have. And it's evolved from there. And I think that's what I try to tell people over and over again. I am a big proponent of bootstrap Judaism. Buy the book, read it. The Passover police are not coming to your house. Nobody's going to come knocking on your door and say you skipped this step. Read through it, mark some pages, make your list. Shelley has the little tabs, mine are marked up, and just do it. Like, start with people who have no clue. My father and mother always had non-Jews. It was always us and a table full of non-Jews. They would have absolutely no idea if we did anything wrong. And so just do it. So I guess that's my thing. Just do it, go for it. Do as much or as little as you can, and nobody's going to come and criticize you for it, especially this year, because there's nobody there.
Fabulous. Amen. I mean, really, I think a lot of people get intimidated by it and don't, again, we learn as we go and have fun with it. Beth, I'm going to save my song till the end and maybe we can just go on with Desmond and Emily. Does that work?
Absolutely. Desmond and Emily, did we throw you for a loop? But you're up next.
Okay. Go ahead, Emily.
So I think it's great we can kind of piggyback off of what Elizabeth said. Hearing all of these amazing experiences and years of tradition, Desmond and I are relatively recent converts. And so we have held Seder at our home, I think twice. And so
the problem is Passover only comes, once a year. So we only get to practice once a year.
And every year is we feel like we're doing it again for the first time. So like Elizabeth said, I think it's just about doing it and not to be afraid. The first year we bought a melamine Seder plate off of Amazon. And last year we upgraded to a more beautiful Kate Spade Seder plate. And so every year we're just trying to try to do something new. This year we bought matzah napkins to add just a little flair and I guess the excitement of not having a family tradition is that we spend a lot of time on Google and we try different
approaches,
recipes every year. We try floater matzo balls and sinking matzo balls
and quite honestly, we prefer the Sephardic recipes to the Ashkenazi ones.
Yeah, so I guess like Elizabeth said, that don't be afraid. And my parents are not Jewish and we have them over because they have no idea what's going on. And so just to be able to practice and to share and to make mistakes and to learn from all of that is really valuable. And it's something that we really enjoy doing. And Desmond very much is in charge of finding the text that we use each year. And we try something different every year. And like Brad, I'm more in charge of the culinary aspect of it. So like you said, Shelley, we kind of divide and conquer and then come together to create
and in fact,
a special evening.
This year we're going to be using Haggadah for children, isn't it? Yes, she got a children's Haggadah, so that's what we're going to be using this year. So every year we try to use a different one just to change things.
Until we find a tradition, I think that works for us for our future family. So just experiment and try something new. That's what we're doing on this end of things.
Yeah.
So if you're like me, I have probably 20 different Haggadot, and I've tried a couple years in a row to mix it up. Not even a couple years, once I think I tried. So everyone had a different Haggadah. I don't recommend that. Thank you guys so much. Rabbi, you want to take us out and say thank yous profuse? Oh my gosh, you guys, I've learned so much. Thank you.
So I want to do. One, I just want to reiterate in terms of, mistakes. Just think about it this way. It takes us 40 years to get from Egypt to the promised land, to the land of Israel. I mean, it's not 40 years. You could walk it way, way faster. So, there are a lot of wrong turns, in what we're actually celebrating. So, your wrong turns are just part of the whole process. They're built into the nature of the holiday. They're part of the journey. So maybe before before we do a concluding song, maybe if anybody has any questions, or if anybody else who would like to share, a quick Seder tip of your own, maybe we can just unmute yourself and ask or share. So we'll take like 5 minutes at that if we have 5 minutes worth of questions or comments. Don't be shy.
So I've got a couple of little tips. I kind of put it in the chat earlier, but I'll just mention it. So a couple of years ago, I had a family with young kids come over for my Seder. And so I decided to try to make it much more child friendly, and they were young kids. So I had a little doll that was, Moses in a basket. And then for the 10 plagues, I had for each plague, like the one with the flies, I had plastic flies that I threw at everybody. And then, the cow. And so I had a little, stuffed cow and had it flop over dead. And, and so I just kind of did the 10 plagues that way, so that for each one, I had some little, prop that I used, and the kids thought it was funny.
And Reba, I'm just going to dovetail with that. We have this wonderful kit, the 10 plagues puppets, finger puppets for kids. But I think what everyone is saying is just be in our joy. Don't worry. And just as you were saying, Elizabeth, just do it. Just go for it. Just do it. Thank you, everyone. This has been amazing.
So there's also a Passover Magic Kit that I've had fun with a bunch of years. It's got things like hidden afikoman card tricks, and it takes a little bit of advanced notice to prep the tricks, but it's really fun. Again, do something memorable, because nobody's going to remember all the fine points of the text. They're not going to remember, oh, he read this version of this and she skipped this, and they're going to remember the memorable things that you give them, and we've had so many of them. So I want to thank all of our speakers for sharing your ideas, and I want to thank Beth and Tamara for getting us organized, and everybody for showing up to be here. Last comment and then a song. One of my favorite parts of the Seder is the 4 children, right? The wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one who can't ask. And the reason I love it is because the point is that you have to teach different people the story in different ways, right? And for me, in the end, any teachers out there, I know we have some educators out there. Pesach is ultimately, I think, the epitome, the Jewish miracle of pedagogy. It's a way of teaching, that uses the senses, it uses taste, it uses song, it uses touch, it uses different ways, different approaches. You have to tell, it's all about telling this story of liberation, but we have to use all these different ways to tell it. So, be aware of who your folks are and tell the story in a way that they can hear it. And with that, you will have fulfilled the mitzvah, the core of Seder. So our last song, page 29 in the Haggadah, is the end, is the very end. And L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim, which means next year in Jerusalem. And I want to think that, at least this year, we have this hope of Jerusalem is both a real physical place, but it's also a kind of metaphorical place, an idea of, where heaven meets earth. And so, next year, if not physically, for those who have the opportunity to be physically in Jerusalem, most of us, can be metaphorically in Jerusalem, if not physically. And, for me, I guess, as I think this next year in Jerusalem, at the end of this year's Seder, my Jerusalem is going to mean, a world where we can all sit together at a table. Next year on the other side of the pandemic, next year in person. So the words are really simple. And again, this one kind of, just as I begin with the chant, with the journey, I always like to kind of end the journey. And this is kind of a chant too. And it goes like this. L'shana haba'a, l'shana haba'a, l'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim, l'shana haba'a, l'shana haba'a, l'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim, l'shana haba'a, l'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim, l'shana haba'a. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. So next year in Jerusalem, and this year via Zoom or around your table or whatever it is, may your journey be joyous, and may you experience the trip from